Welcome to Searching for the Question Live. My name is David Orban, and I am very glad to have you following the show. We are streaming live simultaneously on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Twitch, and you are welcome to ask questions, make comments. I will be able to select them and answer them right here. But of course, I would also like you to subscribe to the channel in order to be alerted to our future episodes. And you can also participate in the Discord community, where we continue the conversations around the themes that we from time to time cover. And if you find what I am doing valuable on searching for the question live or elsewhere, you are also more than welcome to sign up as a fan, a supporter, a sponsor, or a benefactor on Patreon at patreon.com/David Orban. Today's guest is Cosimo Orban. He is a VFX artist that explores the various features and the various opportunities of a digital medium. This is something that is actually relatively new. It is not something that has been going on for many years, maybe 10, 20, 30, definitely not more. A new field that is evolving very rapidly, that we see when we go to the cinema, when we watch a movie on television, but also as part of advertising or the data representation of how scientific results can be communicated. As a matter of fact, in many fields today, concretely, visually representing your results has become very, very common. And many technologies that we cover on Searching for the Question Live concur. Computer science, artificial intelligence, popularizing results, being able to understand the world, simulating, modeling, synthesizing realities. Also, full disclosure, as you may have gathered because of the same last name, Cosimo is one of my children. He is the middle son. So welcome, Cosimo, to Searching for the Question Live.
I thought I had seen your face before.
That's right, and so have I. One of the things that I like to do with my guests to break the ice is to ask where they are and to show them where I am. In your case, this is not possible because we are both in the same place.
Right.
Bergamo, Italy, it's a quite nice city. Tell me about it. You were born here, right?
Yeah. So I've lived, as in staying in Bergamo, for the entirety of my life for now. And I find it a very livable city. It's very bustling. It's very, it benefits greatly from its closeness to one of the greatest airport hubs in Europe. And that makes it a very tourist-like place to be. And that makes it very, very rewarding to explore. But I also had the pleasure to explore its livable neighborhoods and parks and the surrounding mountains, as you are so keen on mentioning on your live streams. It's a very lucky spot to be in, so close to the mountains, so close to the sea, and in a very cultural relevant site. and there's some things for anyone in this place.
So just to travel a bit on the planet here, if you were to pick one place that could be your favorite today, what would it be outside of Italy?
Since I've traveled to Japan, I've been in love with it, and I've had the chance to travel thoroughly throughout the Japan island, the main island, and I would pick Kyoto as my go-to city for Japan at this time.
Let's go there.
Let's go there. Yeah.
Yeah, traveling is something we both love to do, and these days it is only possible to travel on Google Earth and things like that. But
this is as close as we can get, and I'm still itching to bring my carry-on here and make it full of clothes and travel stuff.
There you go. So this is Kyoto. Yeah, I've never been actually. I have been to other cities in Japan, but I have never been to Kyoto.
It's so nice. It's such a great place, and I would love to go there again, simply because there are lots of places where you get the feel that you will not get the full gist of how it works, how it clicks, before having actually lived there for maybe weeks even, and then you can say I've lived through the Kyoto lifestyle, or any other city has its own flavor. And I found that that was the case in Japan, but it was pretty much the same in every country as well. And it's one of the reasons why I love traveling so much.
So Scott Summit is following the show, and he agrees with the choice of Kyoto. And hello, Scott. Great to have you here. So let's go to your passion for art in general and digital art in particular. How did it start? How do you remember this passion starting?
This is nice, because we, as me and you, already had these kind of conversations, and we get to explore it even further. And this might light some bulbs in your mind for how things started off. I do remember vividly how I enjoyed watching animation movies, and when I was a kid, animation movies were very bare bones, and they were very primitive in how things, watching now an animated movie is nothing like Toy Story, where there was no global illumination or techniques that we use nowadays for making things look shiny and nice. And I was so young, and I was so gawking at these very beautiful images and stories, that I asked you, is this something that someone does, and that is created? How does this come to be? And you were very you were always thinking about how we could be directed into a path that we might enjoy, and passions that we might explore. And you did point me towards the fact that people did this as a job, as a profession. And so Toy Story came to be just like any other art production. And there was a thought process, there was a workflow, and there were teams who did each did the part in bringing about this vision. And I was very impressed. I was very excited to learn about it. And that started a veritable landslide of interest, because at that point I didn't know anything about that, and that my own passion was grounded in what I could read on the internet. I'm lucky enough to be a millennial, and I'm lucky enough to be part of the generation of people who can get access to any information they want on the web. So no matter that I wasn't in LA or in San Francisco, where movie studios are making their big budget movies, I could get access to that knowledge. And little by little, I understood more and more about how things are created, how then an entire project starts from start to and gets completed, and that inevitably led me to narrowing down the funnel of my interest, and focusing it more, even more on what eventually led to me becoming a VFX artist. I could have been the guy who sculpted the hair on Sully here in Monsters Inc. I could have been the guy who lit up the room of the little girl here in the same movie. And those are professions within the same studio. But that was not something that I found myself in.
Talking about Monsters Inc., I remember at the time when this came out in 2001, streaming of movies over the internet was still not possible. So I would buy DVDs. And traveling to the US, I would buy the US version, carefully making sure that the audio would not be available in Italian.
That's right.
And it was amazing because, yes, all of you watched the movies in English, and the reason I wanted that is because you would learn English, and you did. But at the same time, all of you were contrarian enough to just to provoke and to disturb. You would set it in Turkish.
I do remember that, but it was not for the purpose of disturbing the piece. It was because our brains couldn't handle that much English in one sitting. I would have pretended to want to learn Turkish instead of watching Monsters Inc. in English for the 5th time in a day. And I do remember that phrase you're quoting there. It's not going to be that pronunciation, I'm sure, but Gerenduze Wazowski is is the snail lady saying, "I'm watching you, Wazowski, in Monsters Inc." And it's one of those go-to sentences that we do quote. Yeah, exactly. That part there.
It's, I'm watching you, Wazowski. Yeah.
Watching you, Wazowski.
and yes, in Turkish we learned it in Turkish.
Also, I'm not going to give the mantle of English teacher to movies. I'm going to give it to video games. I'm sorry. You should have brought me video games.
That's fine. That's fine. So whatever it is, your sister, hopefully a guest in the near future on the show as well.
Yeah.
She learned it via songs and from fan subbing.
She's a Gen Z. What do you expect?
And you say video games. So which video game you remember struggling but enjoying in English?
I do remember that in my earliest memories of video game playing, it was Age of Empires. So that was one of the franchises where it was a real-time strategy game, and it was very resource based and stuff, and it was all in English, and it was isometric and menus all over the place, icons, and it was strategic. So in order to get good at it, you needed to know what you were doing. So there was an element of improvement to, one-to-one improvement to your understanding of the game, and you're getting better at it. And the visuals were nice for a 7-year-old brain, and it was nice and shiny. I loved it very much. That and probably Civilization 3, which is old as shizzle. Yeah. And this is even more, this is to the power of 3 of Age of Empires. This is not even real time. You had all the time in the world to make it happen and to learn even the most advanced functions. And this one had politics in it. It had geodynamics of a scale that I couldn't handle at the time, and that I still cannot, I guess. But this led me to the point where I thought I could eventually start reading books in English. And I found myself in the situation where I couldn't. I really wanted to, but I couldn't. I wasn't ready for it. And one book, I would be surprised if you could find it. One book.
I'm gonna try. Forgive me if I leave you alone on the screen while
go ahead. I can handle it. I can handle the crowd. The book that I tried to sink my English teeth on was A Fire Upon the Deep. And I do not remember the author at this time, I'm sorry. But it was a very, well, I'm spoiling it already because I'm telling you guys that I eventually got to read it. I managed to. But at the first maybe 2 or 3 times that I tried to run it through, I couldn't. And I was very frustrated by it because it sounded like a very interesting story, and I'm drawn to interesting stories, especially sci-fi stories. That, and also Diamond Age, another one which I still didn't read. That is one of those books that I have in my backlog, and I'm putting it behind Foundation. You will excuse me for that. And I also read Dune very recently. All books that I know I'm enjoying much more because of their English.
Fire Upon the Deep is Vernor Vinge.
Oh, there you go.
And I didn't find it, but I did find what I thought would be the one that you would mention.
Oh, that one too.
Right, yeah, too. Neil Gaiman's American Gods.
Yeah, it's one of those.
Yeah. So let's go back to your realizing that you couldn't only consume these things, but you could start and build things, right?
Right, and it is an interesting story because at that point I was a very broad consumer, in the sense that I didn't put my effort into anything vertically. I wanted to know something about everything in the digital arts department, industry, world. And I was more interested in some things and less interested in others. And there were some very interesting sidetracks that I explored along the way. So one of the topics that I invested in initially was 3D modeling. So it is the simpler cousin of CAD, because it's much freer, it's much less subdued by restraints. Yeah, I see you're showing my ArtStation. These are some very early 3D models, not the earliest. I know you do remember the earliest.
It's the Panda, right?
Yeah, it is one of the earliest. I think you will find it on my Facebook page. There's an album for that, dating back to 2008. And by learning to model, I was very proud of my creations. I was very interested in their development and their being. And you being on my shoulder all the time directed my interest into something else that was rising at the time, which was 3D printing. So the Panda, which you're not finding, is one of the very first 3D models that I had 3D printed. Mm-hmm. And that was back in 2010, maybe even earlier. And it was through Shapeways, online service for 3D printing in a powder-based technology. one of the only available of the resolution that I needed for that part to be, affordable, because FDM or any other material would have been cost expensive. But I was very excited to have that process of designing the part, having it on my screen, and then magically happen to have it in my hands without much in the way of tools and hands nitpicking at material. And along the way, I even learned a lot about 3D printing, of course, because there are some optimizations that need to happen for the part to be 3D printable and not cost an eye and a leg, and for it to be within the thresholds of printability, and so on and so forth. So there you go. This is actually my Shapeways store, and this is a very good panda model. A very good model. You turn it around, you will see on its butt that there is a hole, and it's not a pun. It's a way for me. It's a very convenient hole. It makes it hollow, so that I don't have to pay for the material inside. It's much more light, and it's much more easy to print and deliver. 3D printing is nice like that it doesn't require for the part to be, too constrained by usual manufacturing technologies.
This was also very nice, the twisted heart.
Yeah. It was a few years that I had this tradition of 3D modeling and 3D printing a new heart shaped necklace for my girlfriend. And the designs carried on for 3 iterations before I didn't carry on with that. But I do like them. It's nice pieces of jewelry.
Yeah, and this is inexpensive enough even in metal. Yeah,
I mean, you're now looking at the pricing for white natural versatile plastic.
Oh,
stainless steel is probably going to be not that bad, not that bad at all.
Yeah, 30 euro in this case. Yeah. Now, how come you didn't keep going in 3D printing?
Well, you could say that I didn't keep going, but I did, in the sense that I kept on exploring the technology. I kept on testing it out and learning about it. There was a time where for a few years I was very vocal about it, and in Italy at least, I was one of those people who you would see on a stage talking about how transformative it would be and how the industry 4.0 would be around the corner and transform everything that they own. And it is still part of my professional life and background. I have and I am working with Authentise at this moment, a company based in the development team is all over, but based in the US, developing a software platform for additive manufacturing workflow. And it was part of my 3D printing journey to join with them and to learn about the technology hurdles of the hardware itself, but also how the data could be leveraged for a much more efficient and optimized workflow, and the various ways in which this must be the foundation of a 21st century manufacturing operation to make it so that 3D printing can actually live to its potential. So
it's funny. Authentise was founded by a student of mine at Singularity University, Andre Wagner.
Yeah.
And just to illustrate the strangeness, because you say, oh, I suggest or influence or nudge. I didn't even know they engaged you. You told me about it, and I didn't even realize. Neither you nor Andre told me beforehand that you started collaborating, and it was cool. I was okay. That's great.
Well, that's what networks are for. I mean, they don't need an active hand for things to happen. At that point, I was writing journalistically for 3D printing industry and other. I had a project in Italy for 3D printing journalism that I was pushing and I was writing for. So I was wetting my feet in a wider scope of 3D printing, influence. And Andre picked me up from there, and I'm glad they did. And that,
And
yeah,
so we will go and go back to talk about your art. But I was browsing your photos and couldn't but stop on this, where you are hugging Nigel, a mutual friend and a proud cyborg who died just a few weeks ago. So I
yeah,
I want to acknowledge him for a moment.
yeah. This is a great photo and a great moment that I do remember candidly. Nigel was such a great person and a great influence on me and a lot of other people, for his positivity and his great human being. And yeah, this was a great moment for me.
Okay, so let's go in the meat of it a bit, and look at some of your latest work,
Oh
because
yes, please.
we could certainly talk about each of your works, but let's start with one in particular, and then look at maybe four. Now, these are videos, and I want to start with the Seasons of Buddha. They are all short, so we can watch them first and then maybe comment them. Okay?
Right.
Okay, so that's pretty cool, and I have no idea how it is done.
All right.
Just I, as they say, I wouldn't even know where to start.
Um, well, this is interesting. I would. Let's see if I can find it. Just real quick.
I suppose you are looking for a book. We have a show here. Please, can you come back?
Here I am. I did manage to find it, and this is an interesting story. I was accompanying a friend of mine to the Tunisian embassy to get some paperwork done, and it was a very strong
a friend like Sabri here, maybe
a friend just like him, and we got caught in a very strong hailstorm, like very strong in the middle of Milan, and we huddled together with some tens of people in a bar. We were lucky enough to find a table, and we sat and we got coffee, and he was talking to some people, and I don't even know how, but I got this idea of a very short project, a VFX project. And this is one of the very first storyboards that I ever did. And I try to remember from my many hours of viewing of digital arts creation how these things should go and how they should be designed to help the process. And you can see that this is practically spot on with the video. We have the bamboo at the first shot, then the close-up of the statue, and some comments and directions for the shot to happen. So you're saying you do not know how these things are built. Nobody does. I didn't know. I didn't know the bricks, how they should be laid. I had this idea, and then what led next was the okay, so I have a concept and I need to build all of this stuff. And I went through the process of modeling, of creating the 3D files for it. And those files were used for layout purposes, for creating the scene and the composition and laying it down the camera, knowing the angle, knowing the movements, and what was in camera and when and how to optimize on the scene creation so that I didn't have to go nuts creating, the mountains for hundreds of kilometers beyond. I could just put a plate as they did in the old times. And all of this came as I went about it. It is one of the very earlier projects that I did of this scope. So it was a learning experience for me as well. It's what I'm trying to say. And it is a project that got me to have a hand in pretty much any side of the production process itself. I needed to direct. I needed to do my photography, to do my modeling, to do my post-processing. And the one bit that I didn't do, but that I did put some direction, don't spoil.
I am. Oh, this is so short. Sorry.
It is very short, and I'll get about it in a minute. The one bit that I didn't do, and that I'm kind of bummed that you couldn't put the audio in the stream because we couldn't hear anything, is that I didn't do the sound design. That was handled by a friend of mine called Nicholas Frickleton, and he has a passion, just like me, of arts and production, but on the other side of the equation, which is sound design. And he did all of the very, delicate equilibrium of sound and music design and sound design in the midst. So the scene had its own rhythm, but it also had its own elements, its environmental elements that wanted to have a place in the cacophony of the design, of the sound design. And
I didn't realize that I wasn't sharing audio. I can do that as well. And yes, the audio of the monk video is very nice too. So let's look at some other videos of yours. And then
because I did collaborate with him on many other projects, so he has a hand in those recent ones as well.
Yeah. What I want is to talk about your tools, not only the process but the tools as well. In the meantime, David De Weert says hello from Canada, and lots of friends around the world chiming in.
Awesome.
let's look at this. I like this one too. Sorry, let me play it here because it wouldn't go full screen otherwise.
Yeah, it does. So this is a nice one. It's a smaller project in scope, but I did learn a lot about through it, and it's one of the reasons why I start on a project for starters. And we also often say that we put ourselves in our work, and this is true in the sense that we do have experience as scuba divers and scuba diving, and we do have firsthand experience of how things happen underwater, and the dynamics of the lighting and the sound. This is all part of us, informing how it works on scenes like this. And you were asking about the tools, and it's as I mentioned at the very beginning of our discussion, my interest focused as I went about learning it, and as I did, I converged more and more on VFX, which is the art of creating dynamic effects for movies and advertising and any art project. For example, you would imagine a building collapse or an explosion or any kind of magic effect or liquid simulation, smoke simulation, pyro, and any of that sort. And for that, we use one of the industry standards tool is Houdini, developed by Side Effects. And it's a very, very powerful tool that is
Can you share your screen and show it a little bit how it works?
On my Mac, that wouldn't be a great idea. And I don't even think I have it on my Mac, unfortunately.
Okay, no, don't worry.
But the concept and the uniqueness of this tool is that it is node-based. So usually you would have a tool like Autodesk Maya, where the active part of the artist is tracked through a history, yes, but it doesn't happen parametrically to the other scene's components. It's not smart in that way, and because of that, it's much less powerful. But a node-based system is informed by previous steps and can make changes percolate down the line, so that you do not have to re-scramble the eggs just to get the omelet. You just pick new eggs, and the whole process happens automatically. And that is just one of the examples that this tool is very advanced in its own right. And you see the node-based system right there, but it is a very powerful tool for fire simulation, liquids I mentioned, anything to do with real simulation. Yeah, this is a good one as well. The Hindenburg crash, one of the most recent ones. Do pick the audio as well. You need to unmute it, yeah. So this is one of the last personal projects that I completed, and also, well, one of those that I'm most proud of, simply because I do like it very much, and it does bring my knowledge to some kind of level that I didn't think I could attain just some few years ago.
Tell us a little bit about the difficulties here. What were the most challenging components?
Well, first and foremost, this is a very large simulation. So this is actually 200 meters of Hindenburg vehicle. And I was very keen on maintaining that size relevance, because these simulations are not easily fooled. You cannot go around corners too much. If you want the fire to look the part, you need to have it to scale. Otherwise, the turbulence won't work. The pressure solvers of the simulations won't be enough, and that is a very important step that I learned through it.
And when you say it's 200 meters, that is in relationship of the smallest feature. So what is the smallest feature that you had to model in your simulation compared to the maximum size?
Yeah. So there are various components, as you can see, of the projects. There is the fire, there is the smoke, there is the tearing of the outer cloth, there is the bending of the metal structure, and each of those had its own, let's say, simulation resolution. And we can say that the greatest resolution of the project is the fire, simply because it was the number one player of the scene, and I wanted it to look good. And that meant that I needed to do a lot of optimizations to the scene. So what you're seeing as one big chunk of fire and simulation is actually divided into many smaller domains of simulation. And that meant that my RAM usage was, serviceable. Still, for this kind of job, you would need above 64 gigs of RAM for anything that you could work with. And things of that sort that you need to work through to make it happen. And this is more relevant, of course, for personal project and for freelancers, because you do not have the resources of a studio. You are working with your own workstation, and there are limits in that, unless you're making use of cloud solutions for workstations and rendering capabilities. These are limits that you need to work with. Still, I've recently began a career as a studio artist in.
Because you said this was your last personal project. And, as opposed to what?
As opposed to spending the past 6 months on a professional project. So I've been onboarded into EDI as of July as an effects artist, and I've been thrown into the deep of the movie production of Freaks Out, which is the poster you see right there. Still undelivered in the sense that it doesn't have that red stripe of all the others, but it's concluding right now, and it's going to be out in the earliest of December. And that was the very first feature film experience that I've ever had. So it was novelty from all sides, if you want, because I never worked on a feature film, but much less than that, I've never worked in a studio, and I've never had to work with the pipeline that follows it, and collaborate with colleagues that do the same and have their part in projects that are larger than your own computer. So there were many sides to it that I needed to make it and work with. But it was a tremendous experience. It was something that I could not have dreamed was, actually something that was within my grasp as of a few years ago. And I'm happy that I could reach this point. But I'm also excited to see what comes next. It's always a challenge for seeing what is the next best thing. And, I'm learning from my work, and I'm also learning so much more from my colleagues and supervisors, which are light years ahead of me. And
in the meantime, you gained your first IMDb credit as part of the crew on actually a different
great
project.
honor. Yeah.
This is available on Netflix.
Yep.
So actually, it's going to be available next week. Yeah, next week.
Yeah.
But it's you can already queue it up.
Yeah.
Rose Island. Okay. And so I always taunt you that AI is something that you cannot ignore. And I think you're already using AI, Houdini, in its various components, or the physics knowledge of the engine, because you don't have to program into the system certain things about the world, is already made of AI. Mm-hmm. So it is not a question whether you are going to use it. It's a question, are you going to keep pace with the evolution of AI? And I'm often showing you to provoke you and to taunt you 2 minutes papers, which not universally or only, but very frequently shows visual effects results of how certain things that were not possible before are now possible.
Right, but
and then I ask you how this is going to impact your work.
It's interesting because those videos by 2 minutes papers are often showing off the confluence of real simulations into how things are handled by digital artists, because we've reached the point where we cannot fake it anymore. We need to get into the dirt of how actually things are manifesting in the real world for it to look believable. And we have always found shortcuts for those effects to look appreciable and acceptable, but standards are always increasing. And one of I mentioned the example of Toy Story, where at the time there was no global illumination, so that meant that light didn't bounce around the scene from a direct light source. There was no indirect lighting, and still that meant, even with the shortcut of only direct illumination, that Toy Story needed like 1,000 years of summed up rendering time, something along those lines. So the advancement of our sophistication is on par with our technological capabilities, and it's only through that we can make the push for the challenge of realism and simulation. And you mentioned AI as a tool for to bring that about, and it's totally true. A conversations that me and you sometimes have is, when do we start naming a tool an AI? When does that distinction become something that we can define? And it is a very, very fuzzy line, but it's something that is becoming also more and more on the front face of the newest technology by I'm mentioning now NVIDIA, for example. There is a very recent technology which is called DLSS, which is deep learning super sampling. And it has to do with a deep learning algorithm which goes through low resolution images and gets motion vectors out of them by knowing the past frames and next frames, and understands how that image may be upscaled for a higher resolution result, but with the low resolution cost of a traditional, for example, full HD image. And this is only coming about through specific chip cores within the most recent graphics cards. And so at that point, AI is a result of technology, of greater hardware. So the distinction now is made by the cards, not necessarily by the software. The software is an overlay of the hardware in that sense.
Yeah. So what is doable, what is achievable, always goes hand in hand with the resources. Until it is doable, it becomes a dream, and then for a very short period of time, it is at the exclusive domain of those who can afford it, and the others are yearning for that resource, and then it becomes commoditized. And everyone can buy for €100 the next graphics card that is able to do it. I was trying to find before, and you may remember it, the movie, a Japanese inspired, at least, animation movie that was one of the first to use deep skin scattering. You were small enough to be afraid, and actually you went to watch another movie.
Oh man, Final Fantasy.
Because
did it have surface scattering?
Yes. It was very, at least I remember it being famous for that.
What? It's interesting because I remember being at the movie theater with you, trying to see that movie. I couldn't handle it because I was too young and too easily scared. And we went to the theater room just to the side, and the movie that they were projecting there was Shrek 1.
Oh, there you go. That is what it was.
And okay. I did enjoy it much more. And
of course,
with hindsight, I do think that Shrek also had subsurface scattering, something that I do remember in the ears of the orc as the light passes through.
Could be. But the reason I'm mentioning Final Fantasy is because I think there is an important opposition between this movie and Toy Story. The reason why Toy Story's protagonists are toys is because we can immediately apply the suspension of disbelief that enables us to overcome the uncanny valley. This movie, Final Fantasy, was a little bit over-ambitious. The representation of human characters required a kind of fidelity that they couldn't still handle. And it is still very, very hard. But the viewers of the movie were not expecting to have to suspend their disbelief. They were expecting to see human characters. So I wonder what the rating of that is going to be. And I expect a relatively low rating.
I think it's going to be relatively high.
High? You think it's high?
Yeah. You're looking through companies.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Not the remake.
This one.
I think that one.
6.4. So not too low, but not very high either.
Although I do think it's a matter of storytelling, because the movie in itself was an entire animated movie. It didn't, mix real people with animated characters. And there was a suspension of disbelief in that as well, because you were buying that world. There were monsters, which in itself are not, tied to reality, and you were buying that world also because of how it ties to a video game. Just put it simply, Final Fantasy is in itself a video game series, and moviegoers wouldn't go and see the movie without that background knowledge. So it's much more easy to make it a kind of.
Let me read out this long question, but important question from Scott. As undetectable photorealism matures and the ability to distinguish real footage and human video becomes increasingly difficult, what challenges do you foresee this may pose for democracy when the electorate can no longer assume that we can detect reality from well-crafted propaganda? Will confidence in our own knowledge diminish? So, are you afraid of being a tool of propaganda? Or do you believe that you should be checking whether there are moral implications in your work and what you get assigned, maybe? And is it a responsibility that you are ready to handle?
I'm still so young into the field that I didn't have to confront myself with that kind of reasoning in professional terms. So I wouldn't know how I would behave if I were to produce a piece of propaganda video, for example. I would have an opinion that it would not be the right effort for me and the right content to be created, but the question explicitly asks if we would, if that would pose a danger to democracy, and I think the answer goes deeper than what is our relationship with the content rather than its distribution, because simply from the very recent election in the US, we got a glimpse into how social platforms are handling, statements, political statements from both sides and from any direction, as this needs to be fact-checked. And for any facts regarding X topic, please do review official sources. And that would be the same for also for computer-generated content that would be flagged as propaganda. It's a matter of flagging that content that eventually leads to that question to be posed.
Yes,
and
so
I think it's important
agree
that we pose that question.
That our tools are evolving and are becoming as sophisticated for defending our coherent description of the world and cohesive understanding of what we hear or what we see as the tools that attack that kind of worldview.
Yeah.
And the danger lies not in the ability of those who wield those tools to attack or defend. The danger lies in the inability of those who give up. And that is what comports the consequence of that giving up is the fragmentation of reality, which I actually addressed a couple of weeks ago in my weekly series, the Context. And this fragmentation of reality is, I believe, very important, because we are pattern matching machines. And if we stop trusting the tools that we have available, it still doesn't stop us from wanting to create meaning. But instead of being able to rely on reason and science and a coherent worldview, we will create meaning through superstition, conspiracy theories, and desperately trying to have trust in people who will crave our faith in them, but who do not deserve it. So the challenge that Scott highlights is of a fundamental nature. It doesn't depend on the tools. It depends on our ability to keep up with the world. And actually, this past week, I offered one of two sets of tools that enhance our ability to keep up with the world, which is intelligence augmentation, even more technology to help with that. And tomorrow I am going to record the next episode of The Context, which will air this Sunday for Patreon supporters. So hurry up and sign up as a supporter if you want to have it in advance from anyone else. And that is going to talk about the second tool, which is collective intelligence. Because collective intelligence is what creates Wikipedia, or even what creates a smartphone. There is no length of study and passion and talent that would ever enable you to create a smartphone. I don't know if, Cosimo, you were following the project where someone wanted to create a toaster from scratch. And they went as far as mining the ore that they need to create not the steel, but the bronze maybe, and then design the components, and then smelter, and then, and the toaster ended up costing, I think, something like $2,000 in time and resources, rather than 20, right? Mm-hmm. And it was working just once, and then it broke. And it didn't work very well, and it was dangerous, maybe even poisoned the slice of bread, just a disaster. But it was the level of complexity that still someone going to the root of knowledge could achieve. But that's it. Only the complex civilization that we have, and it is so precious, is able to generate the miracles that we are holding in our hands every day.
Right.
So thank you, Scott, and he agrees with us. Conspiracy theories are certainly dangerous. Your grandmother complains that we didn't show the hand that you designed in 3D printing, which is also a nice object, and that we didn't cover the book that you wrote about network society in Italian. Well, you will have to come back. With many guests, there are more things to talk about than time we have to cover them. So thank you very much for being with us. And I am looking forward to having you back on Searching for the Question Live.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. And hopefully next time, new personal projects and professional projects that we can review and learn from.
I'm sure there will be plenty. Goodbye to the next time.
Thank you so much.
So thanks, everyone, for following us from all over the world, from Canada, from the Netherlands, from Italy, and many more places, I'm sure, on Searching for the Question Live. please do come and participate by suggesting new guests, becoming part of the Discord community where we converse, signing up for my newsletter, or subscribing to the parallel channel where we have guests and we speak in Italian at davidorban.com/YouTube Italiano. And finally, if you find all of this valuable, join and sign up on Patreon as a fan, a supporter, a sponsor, or benefactor at patreon.com/David Orban. Thank you, and see you at the next episode of Searching for the Question Live.